morning, everybody. Hello, everyone in the chat. Welcome back to Adobe Live here on Behance. My name is Voodoo Val, and I'm going to be your host this morning for the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge. I'm very excited to jump into what we have planned for today. It's kind of a hefty challenge in that we have a lot of steps that we have to do in order to get our end result today. So I definitely want to get through our housekeeping and things like that this morning pretty quickly, just to ensure that we have all of the time that we need to do what we've got to do. I see Sam, Ralph, Glenn, Valentine, Sarah, Susan, Richard, Jill, Celia, Van Dam. It is so good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. But I'm going to jump in real quick and let you folks know sort of what you can do to get involved with me this morning, how to join the challenge, how to participate, how to join the community, and how to get started with what I am working on this morning. So if you folks head over to behance.net/challenge/Photoshop, it will take you to this page right here. Let me pull this up. And this is where you can get a step 1 through 4 on how everything works. Basically, every day you will receive a challenge, and that challenge will be unlocked day by day at about 8 a.m. Pacific time. As you can see, some of these challenges have already been unlocked. We've done challenges on layers and selections to turn ourselves into a space explorer. We've done a lesson on bevel and emboss to kind of create ourselves a space explorer badge. We did a patterns challenge to apply patterns to our space badge or other pieces of space equipment that we may need for our space exploration. We've done shapes and layer masks to make ourselves a robot sidekick. And then today we're going to be using Distort filters to design a space nebula background using a bunch of different things. So I'm super excited to jump into it. If you go to this page, you'll be able to watch the video for all of our previous broadcasts, and you will also get to click the Get Started button on each challenge, where you can get the starter file that I have created for you, so you have kind of a starting point and a place to start working along with me. So I'm actually going to jump into the Discord real quick too, because another one of the things that we have in the How Does It Work section is join the community chat. If you're over on YouTube right now, definitely come over to behance.net/live, because that is where I am reading the chat. It's where all the fun stuff is happening. Everyone is over here chatting. It's also where you will have the chance to win some pretty cool prizes throughout the day if you were active over here. So definitely come over to Behance. And also join our Discord. If you follow this URL, bit.ly/PS Discord, making sure that that P and that S is capitalized, you will actually get to jump into our Photoshop Discord, where you can share all of your awesome entries to our challenge. And I'm just going to show you what that looks like real quick. Let me bump over here. So this is the Discord, and if you come in here to the current challenge page, you'll get to see all of these super awesome entries that people have put in. Spoon River has done this really excellent illustration of their robot sidekick, which was really fun. Jay Mata has got this awesome, it looks like they used the patterns challenge to add a pattern to a shirt that they then also applied their space badge to. So this is kind of like their little explorer outfit. If you haven't figured it out already, all of these challenges that I put together for you for these 2 weeks of challenges are sci-fi themed. So we're going on a little bit of a sci-fi adventure, trying to give a theme to all of the tools and things that we are using. But fear not, if you're not a sci-fi fan, you know, maybe that doesn't interest you, you can always do whatever you want with these challenges. I just wanted to give us a fun theme to work around to keep everybody motivated and keep the creative vibes going. There's some pretty fabulous robot sidekicks in here. This one is from Tan. This is so cool. I'm loving this texture that you've added. I'm loving the little squiggle mouth here and all these eyes and this little pose. It's very great. Lynn also created themselves like kind of like a, looks like a space chest plate, which is awesome, kind of like the one I created as well. More of these robot sidekicks. This one from EMX which is awesome. There's JModa's badge that they added to their space top, which is super cool. And as you can see, there's just tons of really fabulous entries in here. This one from Carrie that just looks like a little metal, like classic science fiction robot is just so cool. You guys have done such a wonderful job. And I'm going to dive in there a little bit more, maybe after I finish the challenge, to give a little bit more feedback. And if we have the time, but for now I'm going to jump into what we've got planned. So as I said, we're going to be working on creating a space nebula with filters today. Let me page this down. So I have created for you folks a starter file. If you hit that get started button right here, let me see. Let me pull this up. If you hit that get started button on the distortion filters challenge, this is what it will take you to download so that you can have this. Basically, it says just the name of the challenge, and it says design a space nebula background using brushes, gradients, and distort filters. I have included my nebula that I created so that you guys have kind of an understanding of what it is that our end goal is for this challenge. And then I've also included a few textures and things that I thought you folks might be able to use for this challenge, because there's a lot of steps to go through for this one, and I wanted to make sure that if you find yourself a little bit lost, because there are so many steps, that you at least had a basic stepping stone, having the noise texture and the clouds texture that we are going to use. But if you think that you can follow along, then I'm going to actually show you how to create these textures from scratch. So I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to come over here to my new document. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to make sure that my foreground and background colors are set to black and white. You can hit D on the keyboard if they are not, or you can come over here and change them yourself. And I'm going to, with my paint bucket tool, which is just over here on the sidebar, if you hit G on your keyboard, I'm going to fill my background with black. And I'm even going to zoom out, and I'm going to right click over here, and I'm going to set my background of Photoshop to dark gray so that we can just see everything that's going on my canvas. And then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to apply some noise to this. So I'm going to go filter, noise, add noise. And I'm just going to keep this cranked up all the way here because I want like a pretty good noisy texture. And I'm going to make sure that this is set to Gaussian and monochromatic. If you don't set this to monochromatic, you will actually get colors mixed in, and that is not what we want. We want a black and white monochromatic noise texture. So I'm going to say okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually duplicate this texture with Control J or Command J if you are on a Mac. I'm going to hide that duplicated texture because we're going to come back to that in a moment. And then on our first layer here, I'm going to reselect that and I'm going to apply a very subtle Gaussian blur. So I'm going to go filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And I'm going to crank this down to less than 1. So it's very, very subtle. You can choose how you want that blurred. It's really up to you for this, but I'm going to crank it down to less than 1. I also feel the need to mention that my canvas size right now is a standard 1920 by 1080 canvas size. If I do, if I pull up my canvas, let me go image, canvas size just so you can see it, and I switch over to pixels, you can see it's 1920 by 1080. That's the size that I recommend for this so that your noise textures and all the stuff that we use affects and creates a nebula the way that we want it to. So I'm going to just say cancel real quick. So now that I've added that blur to that first noise texture, I'm going to go into levels, and I'm going to go into levels by going Control L to pull up my levels. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to crank this leftmost bar down here, and then I'm going to pull the midground down a little bit. And I'm basically, you can noodle with this however you want, but the basic gist that I'm trying to get across here is I'm trying to create something that looks like faraway stars with this noise texture. So I'm actually pretty happy with that. I'm gonna leave it at that, and I'm gonna say okay. And then I'm going to grab this other texture. I'm gonna come up here, I'm gonna select this. And I'm going to apply a Gaussian blur to this as well, but we're going to crank it up just a little bit. So we're going to go into blur, Gaussian blur, and I'm going to crank this up past a 2, but not quite past a 3. It's up to you, again, what you want to do. We want the blur to be very subtle, but we don't want it to be so crazy that we lose our noise texture. And basically what we're doing here by cranking up the blur a little more on this is we're going to create some larger stars. Stars. We're basically making things that look stars. I guess technically they're not stars, but we're using our imagination today. So I'm going to say, okay. And then I'm going to pull up the levels for this layer as well. And I'm going to say Control L or Command L if you are on a Mac. And then I'm going to crank these down to create some larger stars. So I'm really getting, you can see how I'm kind of pulling that out. I'm pulling all 3 of those brackets together towards the right hand side so that I can really get, let's see, maybe if I pull this back, we can get more stars. Because I just want some large star pieces in this project. And I think that's pretty good. That's working for me right there. And I'm going to say, okay. Now, kind of an interesting trick. We're actually going to use the channels panel now to select our stars. If you don't have the channels panel up on your workflow right now, all you have to do is go to Window and then scrub down here and find the channels panel. I've got mine up already. I'm going to hold Control, and some of you have maybe have seen me do something similar to this before, where when I want to select something that is on a layer I'm working with, and I know I want to select everything that is on that layer, I hold Control and I select the image of that layer to select whatever is on the layer. I'm going to do the same thing with the RGB channel here in my channels. I'm going to hold Control, I'm going to click the layer icon, and what that's going to do is it's going to select everything that was not 100% black on my canvas. So I basically have all of my stars selected now. I'm going to come back to my layers. I'm going to make a new layer either by clicking the new layer button down here in my panel, or I can also go Control-Shift-In to create a new layer. Hit OK. And then I'm going to make sure I'm selected on the color of white, and I'm going to paint bucket into this selection that I have for the stars. So now if I deselect with Control D, and I hide that second layer, I actually have a layer that is very, it's just the stars, no black background, which is pretty cool. And I might even want to come down to this first layer and use layers on it again, just because we've got a lot of stars going on there, and I want the larger stars that I've made to pop. So I'm going to go back into levels, and I'm going to scrub this down just a little bit, just to make it a little bit darker. I think that works for me. So now if I hide and unhide, you can really see the difference between the background stars and the larger big stars that I've made on top. So now we have kind of a spacescape made here, but we need to add some nebula elements to really make it look awesome. So this is how I'm going to do this. I'm going to make a new layer. Control-Shift-In to make a new layer. I'm going to come up to the top to Filter, and I am going to go to Render, and I'm going to hit Clouds. So Clouds is adding this weird cloudy texture to the top of my file here. And it's not exactly what we want. It doesn't really look super cool, but I'm going to show you how we can use this texture to create a really awesome nebula effect. So we're going to set this layer to color dodge. So because everything that's underneath this layer is black and white, the color dodge clouds are not really interacting with that black and white at all, but we're going to make a layer in between my stars. In fact, I'm going to group this and label things so that we can easily keep track of it. I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to click all of these layers that I want to group together, and I'm going to hit Control G, and I'm going to call this Stars, just to stay organized. And then I'm going to double click the title of the clouds layer, and I'm going to call this Clouds, just to keep everything together. And then I'm going to make a new layer in between, Control-Shift-In, and I'm going to call this Nebula. Now here comes the magic. You guys ready for the magic? You ready for all of the extra awesome Adobe Cadabra fun-ness of this challenge. So we have our clouds layer on color dodge. We've got our stars underneath. We've got this blank layer called nebula. I'm going to hit B on my keyboard to select a brush. I'm going to make sure that my brush opacity is set to 10 by either hitting 1 on my keyboard or coming up here to the opacity and just scrubbing back and forth till I have what I want. I'm going to come down here, make sure my nebula layer is selected. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to select kind of a bluish color from my color palette, and then I'm just going to click in here. And because we have a color selected, that color dodge layer of clouds is interacting with the color that I'm applying, and it starts to create kind of a nebula effect in these fake stars that we have created. And it gets really, really fun. So not only can I add blue, I can come in, I can maybe grab like an eerie green color, and I can start dropping in a little bit of green. I'm just clicking, I'm not using my stylus. If you have a stylus, you can use that, but this is something that is easy and fun to do, even if you have just a mouse to work with or a trackpad. So I'm just going to drop in some color like so. You can select any colors you want. In fact, I highly recommend that you really experiment with some super cool stuff here, because this is a pretty awesome, fun challenge just to experiment color-wise. And so now I've created like a nebula effect in the stars. And if you want to take this a little bit further, what you could do is you could come down into your stars layers. You could duplicate that chunky star layer, bring it to the top of all of your layers here, and then maybe we can Control T to free transform. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and we can make some of these stars larger, and we can position them in a different way, however we want. Maybe erase from the edges to kind of make sure this stays cohesive. And you can add some more stars to the top of that. You can also come in here if you really want to. If we create a new layer with Control-Shift-N again, you can come in with a gradient tool if you want. If you don't want everything to be 100% black, let's grab this. If you don't see your gradient tool, it's probably hiding under the paint bucket tool, so you just have to right-click that, grab your gradient tool, and then on a very low opacity, I'm going to turn this down, you could add some blue in here. Maybe I'll even grab some purple, because you know I love purple, and we can start to add some purple on that nebula layer. It's really up to you what you decide to do for these. You can experiment. If you want to get some variation in star size, maybe you're not happy with the tiny little stars we've made, you could also grab your brush tool, turn it onto a hard round pressure size brush, turn the opacity up to 100, or you can click either 0 on your keyboard or come up to the opacity bar and scrub it. Grab some white here, switch it to our foreground color, and you could actually come in and do some larger star formations if you really want some larger bits kind of floating out there in space. But that is how I use filters and brushes and gradients to create a nebula effect. I've had a blast doing this. Want to change the color of the brush later, can we, without a blending mode? Yes, so make sure that when you're adding your color, that your color is on a layer in between your clouds and your stars like I've done. So if I wanted to, actually we can experiment right here. That nebula layer that I have made, I could actually go Control U to pull up my hue and saturation, and I could scrub around on my hue and saturation and change the color that way if I wanted, because it's totally separate, and we're getting that nebula effect because we have that clouds effect over the top of it, but it has nothing to do with color until we add the color in on that nebula layer. So you can change the color however you want. You can get a different color. You know, if I wanted to, for example, grab a red color, I could come in here, let me grab my soft round brush. I'm going to change my opacity to 10 again with the 1 button on my keyboard, and I'm going to make my brush a little larger with my left and right bracket keys, and I could come in here with some red, and I could add some red in there. It really is up to you what you want. You can totally change the color however you feel like you need to. Alberto, I'm so glad that you like it. Yes, Faisal, thank you. But this is a really great way to make kind of a spacescape, and I can't wait to see what you folks make. Please, if you have not already, join our Discord, because you definitely want to post your nebula into the Discord. I have one prepared in my starter file already, just because I wanted to make sure that I had something to Martha Stewart you guys with if I didn't finish this all in one thing. So I've already got this saved. I'm going to come over to the Discord right quick. I'm going to scrub down here. I'm going to hit that plus button to navigate to my files. I'm going to go to my nebula. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to say, here is my nebula. Ooh, maybe I should spell things correctly. And I'm going to just post that so that you guys can all see, and maybe I will save this one as well, since I have a few different ones. I'm going to say Control-Shift-S, and I'm going to save this as neb2. I'm going to make it a JPEG, save, okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing for this one. I'm going to also post this one. Boom. I'm going to give you guys a couple of examples of how this can look. Can't wait to try this. I can't wait to see you try this. Our universe was provided by a greater force playing around in Photoshop. Yep. Martha Stewart vibes only. Yes, Jose, yes. But I'm so glad that you guys are stoked about this. It's really, I feel like it's way easier than you might think to create something like this. Like, creating a nebula or spacescape sounds really daunting, or really, really detailed and complicated. And granted, there were a lot of steps to do, but if you need to go back and follow me again through these steps, you can always go back to the broadcast. An easy way to get a hold of that broadcast is just by going back to Behance, and when the stream is over, this watch video link will send you not to the live broadcast anymore, because we won't be live, but it'll send you to the recorded archived video, so you can follow along with me again. Again, I have the Get Started starter files prepared for you there too, so if you would like to use my noise texture that I made, or my clouds texture that I made, maybe that will help you and kind of simplify the process a little bit. If you are newer to Photoshop, definitely do that, because that is included in the file there. And then for the last couple minutes here, because I've got a little bit of time, I'm just going to scrub through some more of these awesome challenge entries, because these are great. Shivan Shaji looks like he used a picture of him and his friends to make little space explorer image here, so they're all just chilling on the moon, just hanging out on the moon, as one does. We've got a really cool piece here from Riaz Shaikh. I hope I got that right, but this is super cool. It's changing all the colors of this awesome portrait. Camilo with this super cute little robot sidekick is so great. Again, Carrie's, that looks so cool. I love this metal texture that you have added to all of the elements of your character. I also love that you've used a bunch of different kinds of metal in this. Like, I'm seeing like brass and gold and steel and everything, and it's just so cool. Let's see, we've got another Zenobia posted another space chest plate, because you gotta have your armor if you're gonna be exploring space. And then this is awesome. B NATO posted their badge. I see you've got the Enterprise in there, along with your awesome badge. And these look so great. You guys have done such a wonderful job creating for these science fiction themed challenges. I can't wait to show you what I have planned for tomorrow, but sadly that's not going to be for another day, so I'm gonna have to take off here. I really appreciate you folks joining me and hanging out. Please stay tuned, because we've got a full day of design coming up after me, and chances to win some awesome prizes, so head over to Behance and come chill with us. I'm taking my leave for the day, but I will be back tomorrow. Adios, everyone.